Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hi, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. I thought you were going to do a joke then and go, I can't hear you. No, you're still muted, and I wouldn't be.
For once, I can hear you. Yes. No.
Yeah. April Fools, you can hear me.
Yeah. There's a few of those flying around today. We can't do it now because it's just gone 12. So
yeah,
and we can't do an April Fool.
We shall see what happens later. Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, and this week we're looking at automation. So I've recently interviewed Jason Cripps, who was head of automation and operational excellence at Zurich. So I speak to him about what makes successful automation. So we'll be playing that interview later. But firstly, let's go on with the news. So I've got some bits of news. So first bit. So first a bit of sad news. John Neal came off his bike at the weekend. We're both keen cyclists. Well, we have been in the past, and nobody wants to come off the bike. So just wishing him all the best for a speedy recovery. All reports say that he was quite badly injured, but he should be on the mend. So
yeah, it's awful. I think it's it's funny in a way because someone who's so senior, you somehow don't expect this to happen. But it also is symptomatic, I think, as we both know, just how pretty rubbish this country is at the protection of cyclists. And I don't think you can obviously take things from one thing, but it is. It's just worrying when so many people do have these accidents, and we've all been in these situations. And the highway code has changed, hasn't it, recently? So it should be more protective of people, you'd have thought, but still happens. Too often, far too often, I'd say. And I hope John Neal, I wish him well, obviously, with his recovery. That's really important. And when he comes back, I hope he's got something to say about it if he can, because he's influential.
Yes, definitely. Good. So that's the first bit of news. So we've been talking for 2-3 weeks now since the war started about the potential impact of the war on insurance and London market. And this week we saw the first of, no doubt, will be a series of claims for losses. This one, 3.5 billion claim for seizure of Russian aircraft. So there's some Reuters. 3.5 billion insurance claim for more than 100 jets stuck in Russia. Yeah, so they've got plenty of planes over there. So this is quite interesting. So they expect this is the company making the claim. They expect it to be contested given the large sums involved. But it's given its kind of the large scale nature of the sum and the complicated nature of the claim, it says here that the litigation will go on for years before any decisions on payouts are given. And like, which is understandable, but also you kind of, you go, oh no, we're not going to embark on another PR disaster in terms of.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in some ways what's being said about this is that it is, even the people making the claim sensibly are saying, we expect this to be a negotiation and a discussion. And look, you've got the size of this is a lot of money, and you would expect in any contractual situation, which is this is, I mean, do we call this a claim? Yes, it is, but it's so huge. It's really about can the industry, repay at some level to help these poor people out, really, when they've lost this amount of their assets. So that's fine. And the other thing I think is this is one of these things that in insurance terms would be seen as an unforeseen loss. Nobody, in a sense, could have guessed it, and that's perhaps what insurance is there. So there are sort of foreseeable losses, and there are unforeseeable losses, and this is a tricky one. I'm obviously something will happen, and there will be some kind of payouts. It just really is about the level of that payout now. But I guess that in a way it seems like it's started at least with an open get around the table type discussion, which is really where it should start, and that's positive for the industry. What you don't want is to get into a big fight, basically, over it. And so I think if people can stay cool-headed and sensible despite the difficulties of the situation, that would be good.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is good. Obviously, this is from the claimant's perspective. There isn't anything in this article given response from the insurance side of things. So hopefully they're of the same mindset.
I think they're lying down in a room with a flannel on their heads. Yeah, I mean, but in a sense they are conceding that there is going to be a negotiation at the beginning. So if you compare it, say, with the BI claims, where it was all heat and fury from the beginning, and action groups and things like that, this is not the sense of this at all. No. I don't have that sense at all here. It's but still, it's for some players, it's going to be very tricky, I think.
Yes, indeed. We'll keep an eye on it. And the bell didn't work then. So next piece of news. So Ben, we were talking last week, and we've talked a lot on this show ever since we started putting it together about the use of language in the London market, and especially the use of acronyms for everything. God. So we decided on Tuesday that we would set up the anti-acronym movement, which is starting to gain a lot of momentum. I thought I would surprise you, Ben, just showing off a few of the initial ideas for logos that I've come up with.
Yeah.
This is it.
Nice.
Anti-acronym. Cut it out.
CIO.
Yeah, that's it. The AAM, the anti-acronym movement. Or we could go a bit more, harder.
Like it.
Yeah, that's it. Or we could go really strong.
Yeah. Cut it out.
Cut it out. So anyway,
we'll
have more on this. We'll have T-shirts printed, flags outside Lloyd's, anti-acronyms. That's us.
Let's pull out some of the worst offenders next week. Yeah. Well, not here next week, in a couple of weeks. Yeah, we've got a couple of weeks off, haven't we? Right. So that's my bit of news. You've got a few bits of news as well, Ben. Do you start with cyber? Yeah, so cyber's this is a good story, another Ukraine story, or Russia-Ukraine story about cyber defenses in the FT. People will remember that it was predicted there would be a huge attack from Russia on various computing systems around the world. Now, actually, rather like many of these threats I find in the world of technology, it hasn't actually happened, like the Millennium Bug, perhaps, but it hasn't happened. There's speculation that Russia is too caught up with the problems it's got with the war itself to be messing around with cyber at the moment, but that at some point that may happen. I mean, some of this is the fog of war in a way, because you wonder whether people have got a bit of an interest in hyping it up and going, definitely going to come and you better get your cyber defenses up. But actually they are saying that there is still a potentially huge problem if this happens, and that people need to be much, much more aware. And Moody's, for example, have warned that it's changing. And the outcome of this is insurance is that cyber insurance pricing, which we've raised before, has increased, surged enormously. So the price of cyber insurance now is huge, and a bit of a problem really, because obviously the insurance industry has been pushing it, but now it's very expensive. Marsh is on this talking about just what companies can do to mitigate these attacks. So they talk about 10 to 12 control areas that need to be there. But the big issue really on this, and this has been the problem for some time that has been flagged, is the grey areas in cyber policies. And one of them relating to this is about war, which is typically an exclusion on these policies. And the exclusion itself is a little complicated. I don't particularly want to go into all the technicalities, and I don't profess to know all the technicalities, but it's fairly clear that what it says in this is that there's a key clause in these policies, typically, which says that if the government, if you like, which has been attacked by somebody, if the government that's done the attacking, if it's deemed to be another government that's doing that's doing the hacking, that is another government that's acting against them. So in other words, it's proven that Russia acts against Britain and it's done it, or it's happening. Then it's provable. But the problem here is how do you prove who's doing the hacking in these situations? Because in the end, it's the wordings typically say the insurer will go off and find the proof. So you feel a bit at that point, well, is this policy really worth the paper it's written on? Because it literally, in the end, comes down to the insurer saying, well, we'll go and find out whether this is somebody hacking you, or it's an exclusion, and there's not much you can do about it. And I don't know that I don't see how the insurers can prove it one way or another. So this war exclusion, and it could work the other way, of course, that if you just get hacked by somebody and then the insurer says, oh, well, it's because it's a war hack done by a government on another government, then you're out, it's a war exclusion. So all sorts of legit claims, I guess, could fall into this grey area. So it's a really messy market at the moment, cyber, and pricing is going up. And you start to look at it, and even the brokers are saying this: is sort this policy out and make this work. It doesn't seem to be working particularly well, anyway.
Yeah, it's a very murky world, isn't it? Cyber attacks and cyber warfare, if you want to take it to that.
Yeah, it is, and it's another angle that if you in insurance claims, obviously there needs to be evidence of what has actually happened and what's gone on. But I didn't really think about it until I read this article, that actually, of course, the big problem is that actually proof of who committed this crime is almost impossible in these situations, because the hackers have long gone or disappeared, or you don't know who they are at all. They're hidden. So it is arguably something that's therefore very easy to wriggle out of if the insurer says we can't prove who it was or who they were, who these antagonists were. So it makes how you sell these policies. I don't know if people are aware of these things, and I think in a regulated environment, you would need to tell people and companies that there's this big grey area in the middle, which we don't know what would happen if you had a hack and the insurer claimed it was because of a war as opposed to just a hack. So I don't know. I wouldn't buy a policy at the moment.
No, it's very tricky, isn't it? Maybe they have key indicators, and I'm just guessing here that if you're locked out of your system and you don't receive a ransom, to get the keys, then perhaps they just go, well, that looks. I don't know. Maybe it's a scale, but
they're saying that most of what you can do is to set up the protections yourself, and it's mostly about user error or omissions, which are the problem, which is people not following security protocols and leaving gateways into which the hackers can enter your system. So it's actually one of these things that seems to be as much about culture as it is about the actual systems themselves as ever.
Yeah, indeed. We'll look more at we should look more, shouldn't we, at cyber, Ben? It's a really interesting area. I mean, when we ran the TinTech London Market Conference in February, we had a session on it, and it was just staggering the amount of activity, let's put it that way. Cyber hacking was going on in the world.
Yeah, it's almost a philosophical debate, really, about whether this is really something that can be insured. And I think it does go to the heart of where does the insurance industry go in future if it can't cover things that are real risks in a modern world. Of course, of which cyber is a major one. And I think there is something the insurance industry, to be fair, they're trying to produce products and policies, but whether they're doing it in the way that is right for both pricing a product and making it work to remediate whatever has happened to the business in question. I think it's a challenge, obviously, and nobody says it isn't. But I think maybe there's a feeling that the insurance industry could be more together on this and work more collaboratively around some of these solutions to these very big issues, and make products work better. Because this looks like we're still back to the old problem of wordings not being clear, and that doesn't work, as we know, in insurance.
Nope, definitely not. Right. Let's have a look at Swiss Re gender diversity. So something we've talked about quite a bit on the show. And you spotted this one, Ben?
Yeah, I spotted this. I have got a few thoughts on this one, and this story came up for Swiss Re, which is obviously a major organisation, and it's got this active proxy advisor, who are people who advise investors and are very influential. Anyway, to say that, I'm sorry, this guy can't take over this, and he is a guy, obviously, take over because of a lack of gender diversity on the board. So they've only got 25% women on the board of Swiss Re, which they're saying is just not enough. You need to do something about it. And I think it's just quite interesting just how tough these active investors are becoming around some of these issues, and prepared to take on even some of the biggest institutions in the world on it. And talking about brand and perception and reputation and so on, it's a real issue. And I'll just say on the show today, I've got a slight issue myself, because I've just set up an advisory group which is all men. And I was just saying to you before the show, it wasn't in any way deliberate, but it was extremely hard to find senior women from particularly outside of who knew about insurance from slightly outside the industry to come onto that. And we will find some women, but I will say, I think there is a real challenge in non-gender diverse businesses, even when you've got the right intentions. And that's not an excuse for where we are, but it's the same kind of issue. I think, though, we're all caught now. We've absolutely got to move forward on gender parity as quickly as possible, because it's just not really acceptable. And I've said that for years, because we've seen it in the research. But it's also got to move. And I think in London in particular, it's not moving quickly enough. And probably in Switzerland, I imagine. But it can move, and then it would just be easier for everybody, and we could get past this and just get on with being normal. So I think it's good it's happening. It's interesting it's happening, and it's interesting that the investors are taking it on, and so they should. It's keep pushing, keep going for it, and I will make sure that my advisory groups are 50-50 as soon as I can make it happen.
Yeah. And I feel for you as well, Ben, because we put the events together, and I tried desperately hard to get panel discussions with gender diversity on there. It's very difficult, because especially in the IT and operations space, which is traditionally been dominated by men, it is tough, given all the other things, can't do it for a board meeting, can't do it for, I'm on holiday, all those kind of things. The normal reasons why you can't attend an event are kind of doubled when you're trying to go after.
And it's a kind of numbers game, isn't it? Because then the women who are available, who are great, and can do those conference platforms and there's not so many of them. There just aren't so many, so they're very much more in demand than the men, if you like.
Yeah.
So it's breaking that, which is quite difficult, I think. And obviously the solution is more women at a senior level, but you can't solve that overnight, if you like.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, Ben, so this story has obviously cropped up in the FT and with the active investor kind of going public, if you like. Do you think it would have had an internal conversation and the board just went, nah, we're still going to go with Sergio?
Yeah, I mean, that's the point about a big brand that has a reputation out there like this. I think there is a duty to lead on the part of these businesses, and I think the size and the scale and the power and the influence of these businesses means they are not you and me. They are businesses that should be able to attract many more women, and to have only 25% of women on the board when they've set a target and they're not achieving it. Yes, there would have been a conversation. Yes, I suspect they said, stuff you, we're not going to do anything much about it, or else they'll have made some excuses, and the proxy advisor has become fed up with that and said this is the same every year. And I think that's the same point I'm making, is that unless you act and do something, it's no good having all the words and the conversations and saying you're going to do the right thing. It'll just happen. You have to really make it happen, and it has to happen right across the industry so that we see real change. There's too much of the, let's wait a while and all that sort of thing. But businesses like Swiss Re should definitely lead it, and they've been called out here big time.
Yeah, definitely. Good. Right. Letters of the alphabet. Which one would you drop, Ben? Let's see.
Oh, Z. Z.
Yeah.
Z. 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 Right. Okay. So Z. I brought this up because there was a LinkedIn conversation which I got involved with after an article was posted by somebody to show that Z had been dropped. Their logo, that part of their logo had been dropped, and some people said this is overreaction, political correctness gone mad, fear of corporate fear, and so on. I said no. I think it's entirely right thing to do. It's effectively this has been this symbol that just Zurich happened to have because they're Zurich with a Z or a Z. It now looks very similar to the one that's being used by the Russians, which is something that is, let's just say, culturally sensitive at the moment. If without question, if I was Zurich, I would have said straight away, that's it, we drop it. It's now something that's been expropriated from our logo. I mean, not directly, because obviously Putin didn't say, let's take Zurich's Z. It's just any Z. But the point is, brands are and have to adapt culturally over time. That's because they're supposed to appeal to their audience, their customers, and other people who have an engagement with them. And if you don't, you lose them. So of course they should change. So the idea that this is just trivial. The other thing is they're not changing their brand, because that's what people said. Oh, they're changing their brand, and that's crazy. Well, they're not changing their brand or their values or their core way of operating. What they're saying, in fact, they're doing exactly what they should do, which is to say we are sensitive to the outside world and to these external circumstances, and all they're doing is adapting one part of their logo and dropping it. Now, that happens all the time. It's basically quite easy in a way. I mean, you don't want to do it because you want your logo, your visuals to be established and clear and have impact. But it's not changing the brand. And I think this is back to this, people getting mixed up between what is just a logo that's been done by a graphic designer, a picture to represent the brand, and the brand itself. I think Zurich here has behaved incredibly well, and in a timely way as well. They haven't hung around, unlike the Swiss Re thing we've just seen. They've got on with it, and they're good. Yeah, obviously this doesn't look good. It isn't right. We're dropping it.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more that, the brand discussion so quickly in this industry goes to, well, what's the logo look like, and where are we going to, what are the colors, and those types of aesthetics around one kind of either symbol or words or whatever, where actually your brand comes down to the way, as you were just saying, the people, the culture, the way you act, the things that you do that make you different to competitors. That's your connection with all your stakeholders, internal stakeholders, customers, and investors. So it's it's just really interesting, isn't it, how quickly people just go, oh, brand, and jump on the logo.
Yeah, and they jump on, and they're also jumping the wrong way to say, oh, this is weakness, when actually I think it's strength, because basically the Z or the Z here is actually an icon. Okay, so we'd call it in brand terms. So it's an icon, so you can remember, like your tin bit that's behind your head, or whatever. It's an icon. It just makes you think Zurich because it's a Z or a Z. They can do something else with it, but they probably won't for a while. It's just unfortunate, and they understand that, and they could do something else, and they're going to have to be creative about that. But you're right. Yes, I mean the graphical representation of an organization is not the organization. It's just the graphical visual representation. It's a bit of marketing, a marketing mechanic, I'd call it, really. So it's just really not fair to attack organizations for I don't think, for changing these things. I think it's actually pretty sensitive of them to have done it. And by doing it, they obviously make a statement as well, which is, we're just going to not get involved with this, and we're not going to have it interpreted and accelerate a logo that has such negative connotations now.
Yep. Good. Right. So that's news. As we say every week, there seems to be more and more news. We need a longer show. So there we are. So let us get on to kind of our main topic. And as I said at the top of the show, I interviewed Jason Cripps, who's formerly from Zurich, having just talked about them, and he was head of operational excellence and automation. I caught up with him earlier today to talk about automation and some of the key principles that you need to think about in order to make this technology work. So let's watch the interview, and then we'll come back shortly. Cool. So hello everybody, and welcome to this Tinsights video, where we're going to be speaking to Jason Cripps, who was formerly at Zurich, head of automation and operational excellence there. And we're going to be talking a little bit about how you go about looking at digitizing and automating processes within insurance. So welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Jeremy. Pleasure to be here as always.
Yep, good to see you again. So we ran an event together a couple of weeks ago, and we were looking at this topic, and it was clear in the room that the majority of the people were at the start of their automation journey. And I just thought perhaps I could ask you, when you're looking at starting automation projects or initiatives, how do you assess which processes and where you can apply this type of technology, this automation technology, successfully? What's your approach to that?
Yeah, brilliant. So, I mean, we have an approach which really looks at, first of all, just stopping waste within the organization. You can do that by traditional process reviews and methods. So you don't really want to get into automating, complex, wasteful processes unless you really have to. So you'd start by thinking through that end-to-end journey, the process journey. And when you're assessing processes, what you're looking for is things that have potentially got some high volume. They've got that end-to-end journey state. They might be quite complex in what they're doing and multiple handoffs. So what you need to do, though, is to try and get underneath those very complex, probably fractured processes, and really understand what's going on within the business, and ideally end-to-end, from the point of request from a customer through to when you deliver whatever the outcome might be to that request for a customer. And process mapping is core to that, really understanding it. And you can do that in the traditional way, being a lean expert. I fully subscribe to that process. I'm sure many people who've listened to this have been in the rooms and post-it notes, sticking up on the wall and mapping it through. And that's great, but it tends to take quite a long time to do it. You tend to get focused and hooked up on some of the things that are probably might not be the biggest problem by volume, but it's the biggest thing that worries your people today. And to then package that together, you can miss some things. So this is where the automation tools like process mining and process intelligence can really start to play a part. If you've got that digital footprint, and it doesn't have to be a full digital footprint, right? So you could have part of the process digitized here, then it hands off to people who do some manual work, then it comes back and it does something. You can still really use these powerful tools now to automatically map and understand the journey of something that's going on through your business. And that, for me, it's like putting lean on speed, really. That you can get to the bottom of what's happening in a process, where the constraints are, where the opportunities are for improvement, where the wastes are, literally within days or weeks if you can access that data and information. So those are great places. Where do you start? It's a really difficult one, but looking at the enterprise, you typically would go for areas that might have the highest cash amount, amount of pains flowing through it from a cost point of view, the largest number of people, the largest volume of processes. You start in those areas to have a look, but you do want to have a good structured approach to assessing processes, really understanding whether there's an opportunity in there to improve, either from a just stop doing it, remove the waste, or to then take it into the automation journey to really drive up the quality and the efficiency of that process.
So really understanding the process before you even start to think about this is key. And then a good place to start is to look at that kind of the low hanging fruit, as it were. Where can you make a real difference and an impact on that?
Absolutely. And I go a bit wide in that as well, Jeremy, that you what you want to do, the thing that many people I see get involved in is they pick a process which actually in isolation looks like the right thing to do. They'll do a proof of concept on it. They'll do, especially with the intelligent automation tools, and they'll do it all, and then they'll work the business case out and go, well, does it really work on this process? Where else do we go? And there's nowhere else to take it in the business. So if you're starting the journey, you also want to think a bit ahead of yourself about, well, if we put that use case into the business, can we scale it elsewhere to gain at least that first piece of traction? And then you can come back to some of those probably more niche processes that you've got in the business, because then you've already invested in the technology and capability on the wider enterprise, and you can start to pick up some other processes in isolation. So that's the only thing I'd add to that is you do need to think a bit ahead as well as to where would you go next, and not just look at that one case in isolation.
Yeah. So when you've identified, you've done that process map and you've identified the process that you'd like to tackle first. I mean, it's all well and good writing this stuff on paper, but you do come across some practical challenges when you get into this. What have been the kind of the biggest challenges that you've had to think about to make sure that the automation is a success? What are the key criteria, do you think?
So I'd start with the people, the culture, and that within the business, really. So making sure, I always say, take the people on the journey with you. So from outset, really get them involved in understanding what the benefits are from automation, why it's good for the business, why it's good for customers, and why it's great for employees. So the cultural piece and the business piece. If you don't take, I've seen this happen where the operations people, tech people have got really good solutions. They've spent an awful lot of time in a darkened room and created what is brilliant from a technology point of view and does it, but they've never introduced the people in the business to it. So what happens is basically nobody understands it, they're afraid of it, they won't use it. So you've invested an awful lot of time. So that people point is absolutely key in culture. Second thing is what we just talked about. Really, you get the buy-in from you. Make sure you do that proper process assessment. Right, really understand that and look forward. And then the last thing I'd say is typically people's worry about, well, this is just another piece of technology and tool that we're going to layer into the business. It's another legacy item that we've got. And actually, I wouldn't look at it that way. You can use automation as a way, sometimes to bridge between the new and the old legacy, because replacing systems typically is a long job, is quite expensive and costly, and all those sort of things for the organisation. So, there's a lot around about you're just building another legacy into the business here that we're going to have to cope with. Well, I think it can actually help you to drive and create more efficiency out of your own legacy technology stack by using it efficiently, and create, you can create a layer on the front if you want to, in order to use your legacy system and optimize that as the data repository aspect, and run the automation around it, which would cost you quite a significant amount of money within the system. So those are some of those things. There's others within the cultural aspect around resistance to this as well. That will come, and that's the empire piece, where people are worried that they will lose numbers of people and therefore the size of their organisation. And again, that for me is the wrong way to think about it. Automation, and if used correctly, will actually shouldn't remove all the roles within the business. It will create a whole stack of new roles and new opportunities for people, and should enable you as an organisation to grow your business, having created capacity to do more with the same amount of resource. And that's got to be great for everybody, right? Great for the customer, and great for your stakeholders, and obviously great for the bottom line as well.
Yeah, and it's surprising how many times that kind of internal user experience is kind of missed, and bringing them along the journey. And I think they, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you need to involve them right at the start, and actually their input will ensure that your project is more likely to succeed than fail, because they are the people that are on the front line who need to deal with customers or deal with the process that you're looking to apply automation to. So they're going to have the expert knowledge that you need as either IT or ops people in order to make it work.
Absolutely. It's fundamental, Jeremy. Those, like you say, first of all, the people who are in the operations today delivering the customer outcomes, they, better than anybody, understand the process. They understand where some of those, pressure points are, friction points are, where there's opportunity for improvement. If you get them involved up front, and what I've used over quite a few times is what I call seeing is believing. Do a very quick automation for those people within 24 hours in a test environment to show them what the art of the possible is. And I have to say, 9 times out of 10, the folks that you've shown them the capability to will actually come along and go, actually, that's really good. I've got another 15 problem processes over here that just absorb my time. Could you get rid of those as well? So now you've got them on the journey. The other thing to think about here is from your own business point of view and the wider perspective from those people and the skills that they need. The businesses are changing massively. You're going more digital, and those skills are at a premium. If you can use this then to drive a transformational change through your people as well, and reskill them into the new digital world, you're not going to be out there competing in what is a diminishing market for this resource, where everybody is fighting for digital skills today. There's some very frightening statistics, if you like, about there being like 120 million role gap in this space come 2027, i.e., the likes of your Accentures and Wipros and Microsoft and others are hoovering these people up. You just won't have enough in there. So reskilling your workforce for the future is a really important thing, and that's also why, Jeremy, I totally subscribe to bringing the people on the journey and reskill them so they can be, you people of your business today, but actually more importantly of the future as well.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was kind of this kind of between kind of automation in kind of robotic process automation, so quite, it's an algorithmic kind of process, as opposed to intelligent automation and getting into the realms of AI. And And quite often those are quite distinct, almost siloed kind of areas of thought. Do you think of them in those ways, or do you think of it more as a journey? You know, you start to put in some RPA stuff, and then it will naturally progress into more intelligent automation, because the tools are developed in that way for them to actually learn as they go along. How do you think about that?
Yeah. So in one way, it is an evolution, right? So we started with RPA, where it was able to do what I call binary processes. You know, it's simple rules-based processes. And what you tend to get in an end-to-end customer journey is a lot of rules-based processes, but they're quite fragmented because you've got the human intervening in between, doing a lot of activity. As things have evolved, you know, and the tools around OCR and ICR, for instance, you know, that ingestion piece, or natural language processing, natural language understanding, image recognition, all those other tools that you've got, you know, before you get up to machine learning and artificial intelligence tools within the intelligent automation space. It's a continuum, and for me, RPA becomes the orchestrator underneath now. So RPA is really still important within that because it can orchestrate and facilitate a process and call out and use the intelligent automation tools along that journey to stop you having, you know, kind of fragmented rules-based processes that are going on that get handed off, to really stitching that journey together to really then getting you the opportunity to have a straight-through process. Of course, the key challenge in there, though, Jeremy, is to choose the right tools along the journey, right? So there's no point you choosing a machine learning artificial intelligence tool if all you want it to do is to do a basic read of an email, right? If you want it to read the email and then understand it, put it in context, see if there's anything out in the marketplace, then that's a totally different challenge. So back to what we were saying before, you know, pick the right process, but make sure you pick the right intelligent automation tool for the right problem or opportunity. Too many people think they need the artificial intelligence, all singing, all dancing tool, which is actually the most expensive way of doing it, rather than picking the right tools. And if you can get a platform that's got all of those, you know, intelligent automation tools, whether it's process mapping or OCR or natural language understanding, all within the same platform, it gives you a much better opportunity to get the return on investment quicker than if you have to go and get lots of separate you know, tools and then sort of integrate those together as well.
Yeah, I can see that. Great. Okay, thanks for that. I'm gonna put you on the spot slightly and see if you can just give me 3 kind of critical criteria that you think you need, cornerstones, if you like, that you need to have in place to make sure that kind of automations are successful. What would you say? Yeah,
so we said the people piece, right? The people, the culture, the real senior buy-in and understanding to what intelligent automation can really deliver, and invest in that in the proper way. So that's, you know, that's one of those. Secondly would be a good center of excellence or center of execution or center of enablement, whatever, you know, there's all different names to it. So some proper governance and controls around how and where you develop automation and how you release it as well into the organization. But more importantly, or as importantly, is that should be able to enable you to share and understand best practice and do the training through the organization as well. And then lastly, it is, you know, select the right processes to go on that journey, but to the point we made earlier, making sure that you understand where next. So you don't do it in isolation and think, great, we're gonna have, you know, OCR over here, and then there's no other use case for it in the business, you know. So really think through that. Where's the future going? Where's the scaling of it? You know, and there are a lot of examples where you can pick something that I believe is across the enterprise. And you've heard me talk about this before, Jeremy, starting with the ingestion, you know, documents and information that comes in. Every single function in the business has paper or email traffic or phone calls coming in. Turn that, you know, digitize that, unstructured, structured data, then you can really start to drive that. So using the natural language processing, natural language understanding, that's probably the widest use case that you can have, and a great place to start from an intelligent automation perspective.
That's Great. Well, thanks, Jason, as always, for your time. It's always great to talk to you about this. As you say, it's a journey. It's going to evolve, and the application of this technology is just going to become greater and greater as our businesses become more and more digital in nature. So, thank you for those insights, and look forward to speaking again soon.
Thank you, Jeremy. Always a pleasure. Best wishes.
So it was good to catch up with Jason there, and good also to hear his insights into this tech, because quite often in these conversations, it's the technology or the vendor or the selection or the implementation that is pounced upon, where he talked a lot about the people, the culture, leadership, buy-in. I thought what was particularly interesting was this empire building thing where you have kind of middle managers pushing back to automation, not because they don't understand the business case, it's because they culturally don't want to, lose people to other parts of the business as their area gets slimmed down. It's really good. I think the other thing that I took away as well is this. I think that we've talked about it before. This kind of war for talent that is going on at the moment, and the skill, and it's not just within our industry. I think it's been. As Jason was saying, it's your Microsofts, it's the big technology firms that are looking for the same skills as well. So, yeah, a lot of stuff there that we talk about on this show applied in the context of automation, and really interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's interesting that we're in a world now, funny old world, where we've got this sort of medieval almost or last century kind of war going on. But what we're really looking at is a world where there's huge amounts of opportunity and things that people want to do and get better at. And yet, as you say, there's a talent squeeze because there just aren't enough people to do it. I think the other thing that's really interesting about that, and I'm not fully aware of all of this automation stuff in process, because when I used to do it years ago, I would be involved with it, which I tended to run away from, it was very manual. We used to, as Jason said, you sit in rooms with lots of Post-its, and then you go through these process diagrams, which is why I ran away from it. And but what he's describing is that the tools now in a tech-enabled world, the tools are there to do the heavy lifting, if you like, on that process design and find the gaps, as I understood it. And I think that's very interesting in that, because that's where I think a lot of momentum gets lost in these projects, is people simply get bored and they find it so tedious that they can't do it anymore. And then they just rush to some kind of conclusion. So I think that's really interesting. And that idea that you can show people how the tools work, I think that's a tried and tested approach, but often isn't what you get with technology development. You sit there as a lay person, as it were, brought into these processes, and you think, well, when do we actually see the screen or the technology? And I think nowadays you can see more of that, and then that creates a vision in the mind of the person doing the job as to what's possible, which of course is all the positives, which is, oh, well, if we did that, we could do this. And you don't think necessarily about more technology, you think about how it's applied, but also how people would work with it and how your team would work with it and things like that. It's good. I was also, taken with that middle management thing. I think that's a major problem in large companies, and we're not the first to say it. It's not something that hasn't been recognized. But if you look at Microsoft, in fact, that's one of the things that Satya Nadella addressed very early on, and he writes about it in his book, which is the issue wasn't necessarily leadership and getting them on board, even new people coming in. It was all the established people who didn't see the reason for change. I think John Muir, when he was on, said something similar, didn't he, before he got into the transformational space, to say, he questioned himself, why would I be an early adopter? There's no reason for me to change. I'm paid well, I do this. And equally, you've also got this thing in big companies where actually the status comes from the headcount you have, and it has done for a long time. So the more people I have, the more important I am in this organization. People often ask, don't they, how many people do you manage? And you go, oh, I manage 6,000 people across the world. And you somehow see them as superhumans because that's what they do. But I don't know why. I mean, it's obviously challenging and not what I would want to do. But that's the state. It's the status, isn't it? I was managing 40,000 people across 70 countries. I don't imagine anybody can really do that. But
No.
It's the sort of statements you hear, hero statements of big companies, where I said maybe we need to get away from that and start to say, look, some of the better people are people who do it really well with 6 people, because that's the small company mentality. The entrepreneurial mentality is do more with less. And I think that seemed to be what Jason was saying about this, is that you can then do that. But it's hard to get people to see how it frees time up and people up. And this is I'm doing something this week on e-trading about that same thing, as if and the Insider came out with a piece about technology and how the London market needs to change, otherwise it's going to be doomed to disappear. I think that's about right in the modern world. I mean, you do need this technology, you need it to work for you, and you need it to create, mainly because you need it to free people up, because there aren't enough of them.
Yeah,
too many of them with good skills are doing jobs that computers can do. So really, we need to enable those same people to do more, and that's great because it's a very positive thing. But it's also interesting. But yet, human beings, once they're in place, resist it.
Yeah, it is really interesting, because then if you do embrace what you're talking about, then you create a workplace that is moving forward. And you talk about, or we talk about rather, having visions and goals and a leadership then that can communicate that down to managers and teams and the rest of it. But if you're not progressing, on an operational front, if you're just doing the same stuff, but the wheels are turning faster, or you're getting more work, you're just going, well, this isn't helping. But if you've got that kind of, you can see the vision, you know what it means for you and your organization, and here's some either technology or way of working that will help enable you get there, and then come and tell us how we can then improve it. You're part of this organization, you are the organization. You're it's not a kind of dictum from on high, it is a collaboration between everyone in the organization to make things better and work better.
Yeah, I think we need to get a bit more of that vision stuff into these transformational areas to get people to see what it looks like. When we talked about visual designs and things earlier on, they're clearly important, but you can use that visualization to say, this is what it looks like in the call center, or this is what it looks like when you're dealing with customers, when you have this sort of technology. I think that's as much art as it is science. I think you want to imagine a future that's better than what you've got now if you're going to get people on board. And maybe in insurance, we need people to go out and look at businesses that do that well and visit them. Go to their, like you used to go and visit a factory to see how shoes were made or biscuits. Nowadays, you want to go and say, what does it look like at this really state-of-the-art call center? Because you come back then with a lot of ideas, and I've always said that it's the ideas that matter. Technology itself is not something that gets people out of bed in the morning, usually.
No,
it's the ideas.
I'll tell you where I won't be visiting. That's EDF's call center. Terrible. God.
Really?
Honestly, yeah, all insurance is light years ahead of that organization. It's an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
I almost swore then, but I'll tell you the whole story sometime.
Yeah.
I'll make it into a case study. It's absolutely dreadful.
Yeah. Some of them are still appalling, aren't they? And that must be culture as much as anything. And
I really feel for the people that I call, because they must get it in the net all the time. I'm going, look, I know it's not your fault, but can you just help me? No one seems to be able to. Anyway, a different story. That was good, Ben. Thank you very much. Right, we're off for a couple of weeks. We're going on holiday, not together, but separately.
Are we? Oh, what a shame. We could
I know.
Plan more shows and stuff like that.
We should hire a bus and go around the UK.
Like Morecambe and Wise.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh
God.
nightmare. Anyway, yeah. So I'm going away to where did I say? Northumberland. That's it.
Nice. That'll be really interesting. Good.
Yeah.
And cold.
So, yeah, I haven't been there before, so looking forward to that. So it's good.
I'm going to the Cotswolds.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that'll be good. Yeah.
Excellent. So, as I say, we will see you all in a couple of weeks. Have a lovely Easter, everyone, and yeah, goodbye.
Bye. Have a great weekend.